Winter had settled early that year, laying a thick blanket of snow across the Wyoming plains and turning the Dawson Ranch into a quiet, frozen world of white. Wyatt Dawson stepped out of his barn at dawn, breath fogging in the biting air. The sun struggled to rise over the distant ridge, casting a pale glow over the land that had belonged to his family for 3 generations. It should have brought him comfort. Instead, it reminded him of how close he was to losing everything. The ranch, once thriving under his father's steady hand, had become a battlefield, a daily fight against failing livestock, dwindling funds, and the crushing responsibility he carried alone. Several cows had fallen sick the week before, and though he'd managed to save some, others hadn't survived. Every loss felt like a blow to his chest. Every day felt shorter, colder, and heavier. Wyatt wiped the sweat from his brow despite the cold, pushing bales of hay into the feeding trough. His gloves were worn, his coat threadbare at the seams. He had stopped buying anything for himself months ago. The ranch came first. It always had. "Come on, girl," he murmured to his favorite mare, Juniper, as she nudged his shoulder. "We're trying. Don't give up on me now." But even the animals seemed tired. The air felt thin, the barns too quiet, the land too still. And Christmas was only a week away. Most men looked forward to the season with warmth, celebration, and family. Wyatt only felt dread. Christmas meant the end of the year, and with it, the reminder that his accounts were nearly empty. If something didn't change soon, he'd have to sell the ranch, or worse, watch it collapse around him. That thought kept him awake most nights. That, and the loneliness. The house had been empty since his parents passed years ago, leaving him with echoing hallways and silence that pressed down like a weight. He didn't mind hard work, he'd always known ranching wasn't easy. But the solitude. That was harder to bear. His friend and neighbor, Henry McCall, had brought up the idea of a mail-order bride more than once. Henry had found a good woman through the service, someone who helped him run his homestead with kindness and strength. "You don't need to be alone, Wyatt," Henry had said the week before. "A good woman can bring more than a warm meal. She brings steadiness, purpose, help, when the world feels too heavy." Wyatt hadn't been convinced. What woman would want to come to a ranch on the verge of failure? What woman would want a quiet, gruff man who worked from dawn until the stars came out? But the nights grew colder, and the ranch grew weaker, and desperation had a way of softening even the hardest doubts. He had sent a letter, simple, honest, and without embellishment. He didn't promise luxury or comfort. He didn't pretend to be something he wasn't. He simply explained that he needed help. And maybe companionship. Now, standing in the snow with his hands numb and his heart heavy, he wondered if he had made a mistake. Would she even come? Would she take one look at the ranch and run? Would he be able to offer her anything worth staying for? As the wind swept across the plains, carrying the scent of pine and frost, Wyatt looked out over the struggling ranch, his legacy, his burden, his home, and knew one thing for certain. This Christmas would decide everything. And if his mail-order bride truly arrived, she might be his last chance to save the life he had fought so fiercely to keep. The snow was falling harder by the time Wyatt reached the small stagecoach station on Christmas Eve. The sky had darkened into a soft gray, and the lanterns lining the platform flickered against the wind. Wyatt tightened his scarf, scanning the path for any sign of the approaching coach. She was really coming. The thought knotted his stomach. He wasn't a man prone to nerves, but this, waiting for a stranger who was supposed to become his wife, was different. He didn't know what kind of woman she would be, what she expected, or whether she could handle the ranch's harsh reality. When the distant jingling of harness bells reached his ears, Wyatt's heart gave a slight, unsteady jump. The stagecoach emerged from the falling snow, wheels creaking, horses snorting clouds of steam. It came to a slow halt before him. The driver hopped down and tipped his hat. "Merry Christmas, Dawson. I reckon you're here for the lady." Wyatt nodded silently. Then she stepped out. Evelyn. She was smaller than he expected, bundled in a faded blue coat that looked a size too big, her boots worn from miles of travel. Her dark hair was pinned neatly beneath a simple bonnet, and her cheeks were flushed pink from the cold. Her eyes, wide, warm, and full of something he couldn't quite name, lifted to meet his. They held the briefest moment of surprise, as though she hadn't expected him either. "Mr. Dawson?" she asked softly. Her voice carried a gentle steadiness despite her shivering. He cleared his throat. "Yes, ma'am. Why, it's fine." She smiled, small, polite, but sincere. "Then you may call me Evelyn." Her smile struck him harder than expected. Not because she was strikingly beautiful in a showy way, but because there was a quiet steadiness in her presence, something calm beneath her modest exterior. She wasn't timid, not really. Just softly spoken, observant, and composed. Wyatt stepped forward. "Let me take your bag. Must have been a long trip." "It was," she admitted, handing it to him. "But I'm here now. And ready to help however I can." He blinked, taken aback. Most brides arrived nervous, unsure of their future. Evelyn seemed prepared, determined. As they walked toward his wagon, Evelyn looked around with curious eyes, watching the snow fall on the open plains. "It's quiet here," she murmured. "Some would say too quiet," Wyatt replied. "Especially in winter." "I don't mind quiet," she said. "Silence doesn't scare me." Wyatt shot her a look. She didn't elaborate. The ride back to the ranch was long, the snow thickening as they traveled. Evelyn asked gentle questions, about the land, the animals, the seasons, but never pried too deeply. Wyatt answered in his usual straightforward way, though he couldn't help noticing how attentively she listened, like every detail mattered. When they arrived, the cabin's warm light shone through the windows, reflecting off the snow like a welcome beacon. Evelyn paused at the sight of it, her breath catching softly. "It's cozy," she said. Wyatt gave a modest shrug. "It's home." Inside, she stepped carefully around the space, taking in the modest decorations, the neatly stacked firewood, the worn but polished wooden table. Wyatt had cleaned the place thoroughly in anticipation of her arrival, though he'd never admit it aloud, and she noticed. Evelyn turned to him with a gentle expression. "You did all this for me?" He shifted awkwardly. "Figured you'd want a warm place after traveling." She smiled again, this time with something warmer, more genuine, shimmering behind it. "Thank you, Wyatt." It was then, standing in his humble cabin with a stranger who felt unexpectedly familiar, that Wyatt realized something. Evelyn might be far more than he bargained for. And perhaps exactly what the ranch needed. By the second morning after Evelyn's arrival, the snowstorm had eased, but a bitter cold settled over the Dawson ranch. Wyatt was already outside before dawn, checking on the cattle. The winter sickness that had begun weeks ago still clung to the herd like a bad omen. He had hoped, prayed, that it wouldn't worsen. But hope wasn't enough. He found one of the younger calves lying down, sides heaving, eyes glassy with fever. Wyatt knelt beside it, heart sinking. He hated this feeling, helplessness, watching his animals suffer despite every effort. He didn't hear Evelyn approach until she was nearly beside him. "Is he sick too?" Wyatt didn't look up at first. "Yeah. Same as the others. Can't figure out what's causing it." Evelyn crouched, her skirts brushing the snow. She extended a gentle hand with surprising confidence, touching the calf's neck. Her brow furrowed, not in fear but in deep concentration. "Do you mind?" she asked quietly. Wyatt blinked at her. "Mind what?" "If I take a closer look?" He hesitated. What could she possibly know that he didn't? But something in her expression, calm, sure, almost practiced, made him nod. Evelyn moved her hands along the calf's throat, jaw, and stomach, pressing lightly in specific spots as though she knew exactly what to search for. Wyatt watched in silence, the cold forgotten as curiosity replaced frustration. After a moment, she spoke. "This isn't winter sickness. Not the usual kind, anyway." Wyatt frowned. "How do you know?" "My mother," Evelyn began, her voice softening, "taught me to work with animals. She tended to farms and ranches back home. She said they speak, in their own way, if you listen." Evelyn leaned closer, inhaling gently near the calf's mouth. There's a sour smell. And his stomach is tight. This is coming from something he ate. Wyatt stiffened. The feed? Possibly, she said. Let me check the others. Wyatt followed as she moved from one animal to the next. She observed, touched, listened. Her movements were confident, not a guess, but learned knowledge. By the time they reached the third sick calf, she stood and dusted snow from her gloves. It's the same symptoms, she said. I think the feed may be contaminated. Mold, most likely. It happens more often in cold weather. Wyatt froze. Molded feed. He had checked the stores himself, twice. How had he missed that? Shame curled in his chest. You sure? He asked gruffly, unable to hide the tension in his voice. Evelyn met his gaze without hesitation. Yes. I've seen this before. Wyatt inhaled deeply. Relief, shock, and awe collided in him. This woman, this small, quiet mail-order bride, had walked onto his ranch for barely 2 days and already understood something he'd spent weeks failing to figure out. What do we do? He asked, swallowing his pride. Remove the feed immediately, she said. Then I can make a mixture to help settle their stomachs and bring their fever down. You can do that? She nodded. If you have the herbs I need, or something close, I can. Wyatt didn't question her again. He spent the next hour hauling the feed barrels out of the barn, while Evelyn rummaged through the pantry and storage shelves with surprising familiarity. She brewed a warm, earthy-smelling tonic and showed him how to feed it to the calves gently, patiently, speaking to them in soft tones that seemed to calm even Wyatt. By noon, the fever in the first calf had begun to break. Wyatt stared at her, stunned. You. He swallowed, emotion thickening his voice. You may have just saved my herd. Evelyn simply smiled, modest and warm. I told you, I'm ready to help. In that moment, Wyatt realized something new. Evelyn hadn't just brought companionship. She had brought knowledge, skill, hope. A secret gift wrapped in humility. And it might just save everything he was fighting for. For a brief and precious moment, the ranch felt lighter. The cattle were recovering, the air was clearer, and even Wyatt's own shoulders seemed less burdened as Evelyn continued tending to the herd with her quiet but capable hands. But good fortune rarely arrived without its shadow. 3 days after Evelyn discovered the tainted feed, Wyatt rode into town for supplies, and stepped straight into trouble he hadn't seen coming. The moment he pushed open the mercantile door, conversation stopped. Eyes turned. Men who had once nodded politely now watched him with interest sharpened like a blade. Wyatt felt the shift instantly. Instincts honed from years of hard living didn't miss such things. The shopkeeper, Mr. Latham, cleared his throat. Wyatt. Folks say you've got a new wife. Wyatt's jaw tensed. Word travels fast. Mail-order bride? Wyatt nodded once. A group of men near the barrels exchanged looks, ugly ones. One spoke up. Heard she's real pretty. Real quiet. Exotic in a way. The tone made Wyatt's blood run cold. She's my wife, Wyatt answered, voice low. Another man smirked. Sure, but word is she's got a gift. Cures animals. Heals things. Some folks say women like that bring luck. Others say they shouldn't be left in the hands of just one man. Wyatt stiffened. What's that supposed to mean? The man shrugged, but the glint in his eyes was unmistakable. Just saying. A talent like that? People might want it shared. A warning. A threat. Both wrapped in casual smiles. Wyatt paid for his supplies with clenched teeth and rode home fast, the winter wind carrying one chilling realization: someone in town wanted something from Evelyn, something they might try to take. When Wyatt reached the ranch, Evelyn was in the barn, stroking the neck of the recovering calf. She looked up, smiling warmly, but her smile faded when she saw his expression. What happened? She asked softly. Wyatt didn't answer right away. He took off his coat, shook off the snow, and finally met her eyes. People are talking about you. She blinked. About me? Why? Because you helped the herd. He swallowed hard. Because they think you can fix anything. And some men in town. They don't like seeing something useful without wondering how they can use it. Evelyn's lips parted in a small gasp. They want, what? My help? Wyatt shook his head. Not help. Control. Fear flickered in her eyes before she masked it with a calm, practiced expression, one he had seen before in people who'd been pushed around by life. I didn't mean for any trouble, she whispered. I know. Wyatt stepped closer, the protective instinct roaring in his chest. You didn't do anything wrong. But some men don't care about right or wrong. They care about power. She lowered her gaze. Should I leave? If I'm causing danger? No. The word came out too sharp, too fast. Wyatt steadied his tone. Evelyn, you're not leaving. You belong here. Her breath caught, hope and uncertainty warring in her eyes. Wyatt moved even closer. But we need to be careful. I saw how they looked when they talked about you. Like you were a prize. Something to claim. A shiver ran through her. What do? We stay alert, he said. We protect what's ours. Evelyn's gaze softened. Yours? Wyatt exhaled, realizing the truth even as he said it. Ours. But the threat from town was not idle. And both of them sensed it. Something was coming. Something that could test everything they were beginning to build together. Snow fell heavier than usual that Christmas Eve, blanketing the ranch in white. Inside the small cabin, Evelyn stirred a pot of stew while humming softly, her voice warm enough to soften even the winter wind. Wyatt watched her from the doorway, heart swelling with something he hadn't felt in years, peace, maybe even hope. But outside, danger moved silently across the drifts. Wyatt's dogs began to bark, low, warning growls. His spine snapped straight. Evelyn froze, wooden spoon trembling in her hand. What is it? She whispered. Wyatt grabbed his coat and rifle. Stay inside. But she followed him anyway, clutching the edges of her shawl. When they stepped onto the porch, they spotted lanterns, 4 of them, glowing like ghostly orbs in the night. Men. Coming closer. Wyatt recognized the voices before he recognized the faces. The same men from the mercantile. Evenin', Wyatt. One of them called, too friendly to be anything but trouble. Heard you've got someone here with quite a talent. We came for a little Christmas help. Wyatt stepped off the porch, blocking their path. You're not welcome here. The leader, a broad-shouldered rancher named Briggs, smirked. We've got sick cattle too. And if this little wife of yours can fix animals, seems only fair she shares her gift. It's not a gift, Evelyn said softly from behind Wyatt. It's just care and knowledge. Nothing more. Briggs' eyes flicked toward her, hungrily. Then you can show us yourself. Wyatt lifted his rifle, not aiming, just reminding. She isn't going anywhere. Briggs' smile vanished. You don't get it, Wyatt. Some of us are losing everything. If she can help, she will help. Whether you like it or not. A tense silence fell. Snowflakes drifted between them like falling ash. Wyatt's voice hardened. You step foot past that fence, Briggs, and you'll regret it. Briggs sneered. So you're willing to risk your whole ranch over a woman you barely know? And then Evelyn did something no one expected. She stepped forward and placed herself at Wyatt's side. I know what it is to be used, she said, voice trembling but steady. And I will not let it happen again. Not to me. Not here. Wyatt stared at her, stunned by her courage. Briggs scoffed. We'll see about that. Before he could take another step, Wyatt fired a warning shot into the sky. The blast cracked through the snowy stillness, echoing across the valley. The men jumped back, stunned. This ranch, Wyatt said, voice controlled but deadly, is protected. By me. By God. And by the law if needed. You come back here, and it won't be a warning shot. Briggs clenched his jaw but backed away. The other men followed, muttering curses as they retreated into the night. Their lanterns grew smaller and smaller until the dark swallowed them whole. Wyatt lowered his rifle, breath shaking out of him. Evelyn gripped his arm. "Will they return?" "Not tonight," Wyatt said, wrapping her in his coat. "And if they ever do, they'll find I'm not alone anymore." She looked up at him, eyes shining with fear, relief, and something deeper. "Wyatt, I'm not sure I deserve someone to stand for me." He cupped her cheek gently. "You deserve everything good, Evelyn. Don't you see? It's you who saved this ranch. You who saved me." Tears welled in her eyes. Inside, the fire crackled warmly. The stew bubbled on the stove. A tiny, fragile sense of safety settled around them again. Wyatt leaned down, forehead touching hers. "Merry Christmas, Evelyn." She smiled, soft, trembling, full of new beginnings. "Merry Christmas, Wyatt." And in that quiet cabin, with a storm raging safely outside, two lonely souls finally found the miracle they had both stopped believing in. A home. A partner. A future. Together.